Hey there. So, as promised, I said that if my voice opened up and woke up, that I would come back and I would share with you some of the blessings that have come out of this season of, in some ways, turmoil, in some ways, suffering. But like I said, there have been blessings. And I wanted to share those things with you. And one of the reasons that I think it's just so important to share the blessings in the midst of these trials is that when I started doing research about my disorder, I was trying to understand it and find tools, so on and so forth, because even though it's not rare, it's also not common. And there's not a lot of information out there about it. And so, and I think that's because there's been a lot of misdiagnosis, and come to find out it actually is MTD. And a lot of my struggles in the past, I always attributed it to things like my asthma, the fact that I have chronic bronchitis, all these different things. So I just always chalked it up to this or that or whatever. And so when I was diagnosed with this disorder, I was like, okay, so there are things that are in my body that are out of order, and I need for there to be order in my body. And so that was one of the ways that I began to pray to God. I'm like, Lord, please, you're the God of order. Please bring order into my life, into my body, into my mind, into my soul, to help me navigate this. And so here's just a list of blessings that I would say have already come out of this. First off, long before I even knew that I was going to start having all these issues, God had put it on my heart to start reading certain books. And I'm not a big book person. I used to be a big reader when I was younger, and then I just kind of fell off from reading. And anyways, there was one book that I had for years, and I just kind of misplaced it. And God was like, I want you to go find that book and read it, and and there it was, as if I'd never lost it. It was just there. And so I started reading that, and it was Kim Walker's book, Brave Surrender. I had no idea how valuable that book would be as I was going into this next season. Another book that I found out about was from a guy who goes to Calvary Chapel, North Miami, and it's his biography. His name's Trey Williams, and he has this amazing story of perseverance through much suffering, through much adversity, and I was just like, wow, I was in awe. And then there were just certain Bible studies that he also had put in front of me. One was Elijah from Priscilla Shira. Another one was based off of the book of Hosea, which that is just such a crazy, crazy book in the Bible. And when you're trying to understand who God is and his heart, and there's these contrasts that seem to be almost in every sentence, you're like, what is going on? And that became such a wonderful, valuable perspective as well as I walked into this season. So the books that God put in front of me, the stories. Another one was Catherine and Jay Wolfe, who wrote Hope Heals, and I forget the name of the other one. But anyways, I ended up reading her book or their book, and that became very, very encouraging for me as well. And there were many other things that came to me in that time, like some blogs and stuff. And I was just like, wow, Lord, you are so faithful. You're so gracious. You're so kind to give me these things, these tools that I could use in this season that I didn't even know was coming. So let's see. Another amazing blessing that came out of this, I had already kind of mentioned it in my video earlier, was the timing of my appointment with the ENT. I had done it only because it was on my heart to just get a check, a wellness check on my voice, on my ears, my nose, just everything, I have been singing my entire life. I sing at such a high frequency, and I figured it's good just to check in and make sure everything's okay. I need my hearing, obviously, for what I do. And, I've always had a lot of sinuses and allergies and whatnot. So I just knew it was time. And so I made this appointment, and I wasn't able to actually get in for about, I think it was like 6 weeks or so. And during that time, I had no idea that, obviously all the things that were going to come up. One of those things was the collapse of the Surfside building. And so I had been out on the site alongside Miami Beach Police Department. And on site, there was just so much smoke and fire and just so much air pollution. And with me having a lot of sensitivities with my allergies and whatnot, I do believe that affected me and caused that series of sneezes that I do believe led to my vocal hemorrhage. So it was just amazing that about a week after that series of sneezes, here's my appointment with the ENT. And so that I could find out that I had this hemorrhage, so I could stop doing more damage, and also so I could find out that I had this disorder and to start getting tools and knowledge on how to go forward with that. So that was actually a blessing in disguise. Another huge blessing in disguise was on the other side of my vocal rest, which was a month. After that, I finally started seeing a speech therapist. And the lady who heads up the speech therapy was the first person I would see. And come to find out, she's a worship leader for a Calvary up in Fort Lauderdale. So I was like, that's just crazy. On top of that, she also had a vocal trauma recently and had to have surgery. And that was, it was interesting. It was reassuring in a weird way, because come to find out, it was just because of her, her makeup in her own body, her vocal cords happened to be a little bit thinner than average, and so they were more prone to damage, to injury. And my construction, I also have some things that are just part of the way my makeup is that makes me more susceptible to injury. So I found that to be reassuring, because during those 4 weeks of vocal rest, I was just having all kinds of thoughts, including, where did I go wrong? What have I been doing wrong? Did my technique go bad? All these things, a lot of toxic thoughts that weren't productive. And so it was helpful to meet someone who had such a parallel life to me, and she happened to be my speech therapist. Then the speech therapist that I would begin seeing weekly, crazy enough, she's a Christian, and she's also a vocal teacher, and she actually became a speech therapist because she was diagnosed with MTD, muscular tension dysphonia. So I was like, wow, God, you really set this up. Like, to have a speech therapist who's a Christian, who has the same disorder I have, who can help me walk through this. I mean, this is amazing. So that was really helpful because, for instance, one of the big exercises that they'll refer you to is a series of exercises called SOVT. And a lot of those exercises, you utilize a straw. So a lot of you guys, if you've seen me in the church, see me walking around with a straw. And I'm always doing things like, mmm, 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 mmm. And you're like, what is this girl doing? But these exercises are actually medically proven to open up your air ways, as well as lift up and help you tap into different resonators within your body, within this area of your body, so that instead of talking way down here where it's causing more distress and pressure and tension, I get my voice to be more up here, more focused forward and not causing tension. And so the straw helps you do that. So I was learning these techniques while I was on vocal rest, because I was watching all these videos just trying to learn, but they weren't necessarily completely going to be helpful for me, because I needed it to be custom tailored to what I was going through. So to have a speech therapist who actually has the disorder that I have has been very helpful, because one of the things was a lot of times people use a smaller straw. The smaller straw was actually causing me more distress and more pain, and it wasn't helping. And she suggested that I use a smoothie size straw. And I went home and tried that, and it was night and day. It was like total breakthrough. And my progress from that week to the next time that I went to see her the following week was huge. So it was just tremendous setup by God. So that's another blessing. And another blessing within that, like I said, there's been so many different references and tools online to tap into. And that's such a blessing, because I remember different phases in my life where I didn't have insurance, I didn't have the money to go to a specialist, and things like this are useful. So there's one lady, her name is Katarina H. H is in Harry, Katarina with the K. And she has a channel on YouTube specifically to help people with various vocal distress, vocal ailments, and vocal disorders. And she has some amazing tips and tools and just so many different things that have been very helpful. And it was helpful while I was waiting for my therapy to be able to see those things. But it's not a supplement, it's not a replacement for having a therapist. I highly suggest get in and see a therapist. If you have a therapist like mine, their goal is after 4 to 6 sessions that they be able to set you free and you be able to continue to do the work on your own. Mine's a little bit more specialized just because of the disorder. And so I'll probably go a little bit more because I need to bridge the gap between the speaking and the singing. But regardless, I highly suggest it, because then they can custom tailor. But I'm very thankful for the tools online. Another one that I found was a girl named Liz Biles. She has a YouTube channel. She has muscular tension dysphonia as well. And she had been dealing with it for well over 7 years and had gotten many misdiagnoses, which is very common. People get diagnosed with acid reflux disorder, which I've had over the many years. And now, who knows, that could have also just been a side effect of the dysphonia. A lot of people, you'll end up getting diagnosed with acute laryngitis, which I got diagnosed with acute laryngitis, but I also have chronic laryngitis, and that's the hoarseness that I deal with on a daily basis. And some days it's good, some days it's bad, but it's a part of the dysphonia. And so it's amazing because I've been able to have these tools that were available to me for free in the interim as well as along the way. And it's also just been encouraging. It's always encouraging to know that you're not going through something completely alone, that there are other people who understand what you're going through, what you're navigating. That's been one of the comforting things in a weird, twisted way about this pandemic since 2020, is that so many people across the globe were put on one level field, because this this thing, COVID-19, has just affected everyone in one way or another. How you live, your lifestyle, people's health, people navigating loss, people navigating the after effects of having COVID, the stressors of getting a vaccine or not getting the vaccine. I mean, just all these things. We've been unified through it. So that's been another fascinating thing in this season. Another huge blessing for me has been how God has just brought me into an even deeper posture of surrender. It's always my propensity to push through, to persevere. I'm always the one to coach people like, come on, let's go, you can do this. And I'm not very good at slowing down and just saying, all right, today's a bad vocal day and I'm just gonna accept it, right? Like that goes against my nature. I wanna push through. But what I've learned through this disorder is there's this crazy thing that happens. It's like your mind can hijack so much what's going on physically. So it's like if I'm having a lot of tension that day in my throat, within my voice, and then I start thinking about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get everything loose. So I start going through the massages, I start going through the breathing. I'm doing like my vaporizing, trying to moisturize my vocals, all these things. And sometimes I get so caught up in that I'm actually starting to perpetuate this toxic thought pattern, and I actually end up increasing the tension. And the more that the tension increases, the more my vocal cords are distressed. My larynx gets pushed up and I can't get sound out, and it's counterproductive. So learning to just exhale and saying, Lord, I can't do this on my own. I need you to come into this. I need you to breathe through me. I need you to give me your perfect peace. I need your strength today because I can't do this without you. I need your power today because I can't do it without you. And he has just been so faithful, Sunday mornings, he's been so faithful, again, today's a Monday. And so I poured out like crazy yesterday and it was beautiful. I wasn't thinking about my voice. I wasn't feeling pain or anything like that, because God's grace is sufficient, and he provides, he just does it. And so that's been an amazing thing of just really, really encountering his grace is sufficient even more. And I've had that quite a few times over these past 2 years. God is really drilling this home with me. But so I'm super blessed for that. And then I would say the other huge blessing is just the people that God has surrounded me with during this season that I've been going through this. I've had my good days, I've had my bad days. I've had, the days where I'm super positive and other days where I feel very discouraged. And, for instance, he's blessed me with my best friend, my mentor, my spiritual mother, Elizabeth. And she's been awesome because even though she can't walk in my shoes, she doesn't know what it is to have to live with this disorder, she does walk it out alongside of me, wanting to understand what I need and what I don't need. And also just giving me that grace when I'm snappy that day or not in a good mood or whatever. Like, she's just been amazing through that. And also just the people that I work with and for at the church, they've just been so supportive and amazing. and just the various people that have been praying for me, not just within the church, but throughout the world, people that I didn't even expect or knew I didn't even know that they knew what I was going through. And I would get these prayers and I was just like, wow, God, he just testifies over and over that he never leaves us or forsakes us through the people that he surrounds us with. And so that's been really huge for me, just having those support systems, that undergirding in prayer, and then just people being ready to step up and stand in the gap, and how God has just highlighted people to me. Like, for instance, when I went to the ENT, he told me, like, you need to go on vocal rest like today. And I was freaked out because I needed to lead worship in Oasis that night. I had rehearsal the next day. I was leading worship on Sunday for 3 services. And I was just like, how can I go on vocal rest? That doesn't even make sense. And, but God, he was just like, Erica, slow down and just trust me one step at a time. And I'm going to show you how to do this. And he did. So one of the people he highlighted in my mind, he reminded me of a woman who I know from college. So I'm talking a long time ago, like 20 years ago. And I've always, kept track of her on Facebook, and she's a worship leader at another church. And I reached out to her in faith, and I just asked her if she would be available on Tuesday nights to lead worship for at least 3 weeks. And she was available. And so praise God, she came. I think it was a blessing for her, and it was a blessing for us at the church. So that was wonderful. Another amazing thing that God did in that was he had put it on my heart really to build up and prepare others within the worship community to be able to lead, whether it's lead a section of a song or lead a team. And I have been, working on that these last couple of years especially. And thank God, like David, he really pressed in and he's been leading more and more. And so he was able to step in and lead some Sundays. Of course, Pastor Rick was more than willing to step in as well and cover some of the weeks that I was scheduled to lead. And just the team in general, like they all stepped up in this season even more. And I saw them step out in more and more confidence and boldness through Christ. So that was super encouraging and really beautiful to watch as I went through my own process, And, there's nothing like knowing that even though you have a very specific purpose and God's plans for you, that he has also put you in a body of people that can lift when you're weak. Sometimes you're the one that's pulling someone else up, and other times people are pulling you up. And so this has definitely been a time where people have been pulling me up. And so I'm so thankful for that. But I just wanted to share again with you a little bit of, even though we get these unexpected interruptions where we end up battling and going through some really tough stuff, that God is faithful, and that through him, that he will not let us fail. And even when it feels like we're failing by our own standards, his plans are so much bigger that he's got something so much greater that he's doing. And so don't focus on the shortcomings. Don't focus on the things that aren't going the way you want them to. Focus on him, and he's going to show you what he's doing. He's going to teach you. He's going to encourage you, and you're going to be able to do that and pay it forward. And finally, before I wrap up, one of the big reasons that I'm doing this is when I started doing research online myself, I'm a part of a couple of different, what do you call them? Like, they're not chat rooms anymore. I'm so old. But these groups, like on Facebook, they're private groups where they're specialized. So I'm on one for people who have muscle tension dysphonia. And it's sad and it's discouraging because there's a lot of people who have they're giving up. They're so discouraged and negative and bitter. And then people comment and they're feeding into this cycle, and it's not productive because muscle tension dysphonia goes so much further than just these muscles, right? And learning how to not vilify your body is so huge. And so you need to speak life. You need to speak love and encouragement. And otherwise, it just feeds this vicious cycle and it's counterproductive. And I just noticed there was so much negativity, and God just really started stirring that in my heart. Like every time I got a chance, I tried to like post something encouraging or give someone an encouraging word because of something that they shared that maybe was a mini victory, and encouraging people to celebrate those victories. And so the more and more that I saw that was such a need in these spaces, I said, you know what? I got to start sharing my experience, because God gives us testimonies so that we can share and encourage others. So yes, there's the test, which there's been a lot of testing, but then there's the testimony. And even though I'm still learning and I'm getting tools and all that, I already have a testimony from this. And so I want to share it, and I hope that I encourage you. And even if you don't have muscle tension dysphonia, maybe you have spasmodic dysphonia, or maybe you're just struggling in that season with vocal nodules or something like that. Hey, when your voice is a tool, it's a tool, okay? And even just day-to-day life, having to go through and be on vocal rest and trying to communicate with people and not being able to speak was eye-opening and humbling. And it also grew such deeper empathy in me for people who are deaf, who are blind, who are mute, just dealing with everyday people who don't understand what they're walking with. I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, thank you so much for deepening my compassion in these areas. So I hope and pray that you be encouraged, and I'll check in soon. God bless you all.